Hello to the ninth graders and their parents. My name is Tom Tesoro. I'm here to speak to you tonight about the perils of hosting an underage drinking party in your home. This is COVID time, so normally when I do this, I usually stand in front of a group of people, I get up, I move around, I try to interact with the audience. But unfortunately tonight, like just about everyone else, I'm just a talking head on the screen. So I'll try to keep this short, I'll try to keep it simple, but I'll try to point out the dangers that are associated with this. What you'll be seeing in a second is my first slide, and on it you'll see two things. Those who host lose the most. It's important to keep that in the back of your mind throughout this entire presentation. You end up losing if you're not careful. Now, a lot of people will say, I can do this and I won't get caught. A lot of people might say, even if I do get caught, I won't get in trouble because my intentions are good. Those are not sensible defenses. It will not work for you. If you ignore the social host law and you do have an underage drinking party and something goes amiss, you're going to be in deep, deep trouble. It will be a catastrophe for you financially and otherwise as well, and we'll talk about that in a minute. So if you want to live in a shack, or if you want to be a part of a guest of the state in the prisons, ignore the social host law. Please don't do that. If you don't think it could happen in a town like Trumbull, it can, and it does. So please, young people, don't be fooled by the images making underage drinking fun. It's dangerous, and it could end up being quite toxic for you. Now let me turn my attention, if I might, to the parents. There are collateral issues, collateral consequences for hosting an underage drinking party. When I say underage drinking, I just want to make one thing clear. It's the same thing if it's other kinds of illicit behaviors going on as well, drugs or alcohol. The concept is exactly the same. You can be sued, your family can be sued for personal injury, among other things, wrongful death, okay, and property damage. Let me just give you a couple of examples of that. Personal injury. Now at this part in time, my normal presentation, I go out into the audience and ask how many people here are student athletes, and of course hands go up. And then I say to them, maybe you'll be good enough to get a scholarship to a D1, D2, D3 school, or maybe just enjoy your sport and want to play it on an intramural basis in high school and college going forward. There's a recent case, where an individual was at an underage drinking party. This young man, it was a man in this particular case, was ready to go for a D1 scholarship for his particular sport. He was drinking, had a number of beers at a person's home, lost his balance on the steps, fell down the steps, tore up his knee, and that was the end of his opportunity to have a college scholarship. Now, he ended up going to college for free anyway. Now, how do you say, how is that possible? Because the social host who's responsible for that accident ended up having to pay severe damages to make sure that individual went to college. This is the kind of thing that you face. And you may say, well, I don't have lots of things. Well, you have a job. You may have a savings account. You put everything you have at risk when you host an underage drinking party and something goes wrong. Wrongful death. This happens more often than not, but I will tell you a story, okay? Where a person who had the best of intentions at their home, they felt as parents that if it was at their home, they could control it. But you can't. The parent took great precautions, made sure that everyone who came to the house dropped off their keys and was going to make sure that before anyone left, they were inspected and make sure that they were able to drive. Well, the young people in this audience know you're very resourceful people. And what ended up happening was someone had a key in his sock, slipped out the back door, and went on a ride with one of his friends. He lost control of the car, crashed into a tree, I believe it was, and his passenger died. Not only was the driver sued, but the social host was sued as well. Severe, expensive damages. And not to mention the guilt of having someone in your charge pass away. But beyond those very basic things, there's also things you really never hear about. It's the destruction of families. It's the loss of great friendships and the damage that hosting an underage drinking party causes that's collateral damage to the actual injury that was occurred. Let me give you two examples. We had early on in one of these forums where an individual got up and talked about his story. This young man, he was a young man, was at a party. He left the party with a passenger, lost control of his car, and crashed the car. It was on Christmas Eve. A very, very sad story. His passenger was killed. He went to jail for vehicular manslaughter, vehicular homicide. He went to jail. And as he was telling the story to the Trumbull families, the crowd then gasped when they learned that his victim, the person who died, was his own brother. This is the kind of damage that's done to families. This is the kind of damage you never hear about. This is the kind of damage you don't see, but it's real. You don't need to host a social party. You don't want to do this. Please don't do this. But please understand, the damage goes far beyond the incident itself. It lingers on and on and on. Now, if you're one of the lucky ones who happens to be declared not guilty for whatever reason, you still will have spent tens of thousands of dollars on legal fees. Young people, your parents work really hard to put you in a great school like Trumbull High School. Please understand that you put at risk everything they've worked for if you have a party at their house. And even if they're not home, okay, and you do it on your own, they're still responsible for what happens as a result of what occurs in the home they own. So please, don't put your parents in that particular position. Parents, don't put Johnny's wedding fund or Kathy's college fund at risk. This is not something you want to do. I say this to you with all sincerity. I'm a father of 2 daughters. It's not easy to say no. But in this particular case, you do not want to have a call from a lawyer whose heart is hardened and whose sole purpose is to make you pay for the injury that occurred to his client. On my next slide, you may say you might have insurance. Insurance doesn't always pay for it, but if it does, what ends up happening at the end of the day is that your premiums will soar if in fact you can get a policy for the future. That's what happens. They will drop you like a hot potato, okay, if something like this happens. They want no part of you. So again, you put in jeopardy your financial future and your financial well-being by being a social host. Now, I've given you all the horror story. You say, Mr. Tesoro, you're trying to scare us. And the answer is yes, I am. Okay? This is a scary proposition. But so then, Mr. Tesoro, what's the solution? Well, for the young people, don't do it. For the parents, don't do it. But that's a lot easier said than done. At this point in my typical presentation, I walk to the audience, I look at a typical family and a young person, and I ask the question, what do lawyers like more than anything else? And every time I ask that question, the same answer comes back, money. Well, of course, that's the correct answer, but what's the second thing they like best? And that's making contracts. So tonight, I'm going to ask each and every one of you, student and parent alike, to make a contract. Not a week from now, not tomorrow, but tonight, today. Do this. Young people, here's the deal. You agree with your parents that if you're in a situation in which you are uncomfortable, you will give them a call. Parents, your side of the deal, if you get that call, okay, no repercussions. Pick up your child, take them home. That's the deal. No fault, no nothing. Call, pick up, end of the story. Because believe me, at the end of the day, you as the parents would rather have a call from your child than from the doctor or from a lawyer representing someone who is injured. So please make that contract tonight. Don't hesitate, don't wait. With that comes the end of my formal remarks. Please, everyone, be smart, be safe, and thank you for your time.